Sandy, we can go to the next slide, please. I'm Dawn Johnson. I'm the one on the left. And I've had many, many roles in AAUW. I started in my first branch meeting about 8 or 9 years ago. I was fast-tracked immediately to president because I was a warm body. Also because I was talented enough to sell a 15-year-old broken toaster at our yard sale. And also because I'm bossy. So since then, I've had a lot of leadership roles in our branch, and I'm now at the state level. I'm your governance committee chair, I'm parliamentarian. I also assist a lot with strategic planning for the state. And I'm also on the communications team where I do a lot of writing and editing of the materials that you see coming out of the state office. And I like pina coladas and getting caught in the rain. And I'd like to introduce my partner tonight, Carol Hoscraft, who's going to be assisting with some of the presentation a little bit later on. Carol, tell us about yourself.
Right. Thank you, Dawn. And hi, everybody. Being on the state board as a branch assistance director has added an understanding of AAUW that I didn't realize was missing. I joined the Sunnyvale Cupertino branch in 1981 to find more friends, and I found so much more, including Tech Trek. In the meantime, I have been president and just about everything else in about 4 branches. I belong to 5. One of them escaped me, so they were lucky. And I did spend a fair amount of time as in Tech Trek, and I still do. It's near and dear to my heart, as is everything about AAUW. All this means is that I've been a volunteer for much of my adult life. I know our value and to some extent how we think. And I know we're all trying to keep this precious and wonderful, remarkable organization going. So let me give the mic back to Dawn so we can start trying to solve your volunteer issues.
Okay, a slide, please, Sandy. So let's start off with a couple of scenarios. Let's start off with AAUW life before COVID, which is reaching into the dark ages, I realize. But let's go back for a moment and remember those days when, for example, you were holding an auction. Your branch was holding an auction as a fundraiser. And somehow you ended up driving all around town, picking up a heated foot bath massager and maybe a set of iced tea glasses and a food saver vacuum sealer so you could put them on the auction tables. And then you went home and you printed 100 copies of a 5-page auction list, auction items list, and you spread them all out sequentially on your dining room table, and you went along and collated them and stapled them all together, and then you put them in a box with the foot massager, and then you drove to be ready to drive into your town and get your auction going at 8 o'clock in the morning. And as you're sitting there doing that, now it's about maybe 10, 12 o'clock at night, and your husband or significant other passive aggressively walks in and says, slide please. Can't someone else do that? I ask you to think about how many times you've heard that. Can't someone else do that? So let me take you to another scenario pre-COVID, because we'll probably go back to this one too. Let's imagine that you sent out an email and you asked for some help to interview Tech Trek candidates, or maybe to help line up some auction items, or maybe even for someone to be chair for your scholarship committee. And you sent out an email and maybe you put something in the newsletter and you asked people about it. And the next morning you opened up your email and you saw all these emails from people and you were all excited that all these people have answered your email and they all look like this. Slide, please. You sent an email that said, we need volunteers, can you help? And what did they answer? They answered, I won't be able to help with anything this year because I'm teaching myself Latin. Gee, I'd love to help, but I'll be in Uganda and then it's on to Machu Picchu. or sorry, but the grandkids will be here, or I can help every other Monday between my 10:30 a.m. Jazzercise class and my book group. Or I might be able to bring some cookies, but I'm not really sure. Don't count on me. Next slide, please. What are they saying to you? They're saying, I'd love to help, but blah, 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 blah. I want to enjoy my retirement. I don't want to be in charge of anything. I'm happy to leave it up to the vital few. So the vital few is a real term. It's a sociological dynamic of group organization. And it means what you and I and probably 130 people on this webinar live and breathe, which is 20% of us do 80% of the work. That's the vital few. 20% do 80% of the work. And it's not just the case in AAUW, I assure you. It is it is national. Every service organization faces this dilemma. So what is the real message that our members are giving us? The real message they're giving us is helping AAUW is just not a priority to me. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, is how we can hopefully make it more of a priority. And what I want to point out is that tonight's webinar is not going to be about how to get new members. So we're not going to be talking about how to write a stirring elevator speech, or what you should put in your brochure, or how you should reach out to other organizations, or where you can find that unicorn younger member. It's not going to be about that. It's going to be about getting the members that you already have to step up and do and help you and become volunteers, to try to get them to move from being passive to active, and maybe move from just coming to something to maybe organizing something. So since you are probably part of the vital few, you should be feeling, just because you have a title now, you should be feeling incredibly empowered. And so with that flush of power, we're going to go to the next slide and tell you what we're going to cover tonight. We're going to look at 4 things regarding the care and feeding of volunteers. We're going to look at finding them, asking them, keeping them, thanking them. Okay, so we're going to get started with finding them. Slide, please. So this may be where Zoom fails me and my adorable, clever segue into my topic. However, if you just use your eyes, the question is, can you find the pig, mule, rooster, tractor, hoe, shovel? Any or all of those. We're going to give you a little Jeopardy time. Do 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 do. Okay. I'm looking at the closed caption on the bottom of my screen, and it just typed out do 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 do. All right, slide please. I'm going to give you the answers. Did you at least find the pig? Did you at least find the pig? I wish I could look into your homes right now and see what you're thinking, like, oh, that's where that pig is. And also, I'm going to note to you that the shovel is over there on the right below the lady next to the steps. But my wily AAUW comrades have noticed that there are 2 hoes, and I've got outlined one above her head and one next to the man. So if you found both of those, you would get double credit if you were in my classroom. Okay, so obviously what we're talking about is, where do you find things? And our slide, please. Our next question is finding your volunteers. Where are they hiding? Well, quite a few places. For one thing, they're doing the fun stuff. Oh yes, they're doing the fun stuff. They're doing the brunches, the interest groups, the yard sales, the fundraisers, you know, I just joined for the bridge club. And why is that? It's likely because the social element is very strong, and many of us thrive in this organization because we are people, and we enjoy being with others. So that's a strong element. And also, though, there's no pressure to perform. So if you're just doing the fun stuff, you have no pressure to perform. You don't have to worry if the sound system blows. You don't have to worry if you don't have enough handouts. You don't have to worry if the lunch is cold because you're not in charge. So it's very easy to come and just do those things without that pressure. So the challenge is that we have to make the business of our branch, the work that we need to do, we have to make it as appealing and as unthreatening as it is to go to a social event. So you do that by kind of doing a fun with a purpose approach. And one of the things to do is build social networking into your activities as much as you possibly can. Anytime you can bring many people together, it's better because they feed on each other. They inspire each other. They talk to each other. So you always, when you have a task or a job that you're doing, always try to pair with someone else, even if the job is so simple that one person can do it. Pair if you can. Don't talk about committee meetings, talk about planning parties. Make everything informal and relaxed. Bring all of your leaders together as often as you can, regularly. Don't let your interest group chair people be hanging out in outer Mongolia and not connected with the rest of the organization. Bring all your project chairs, all your interest group chairs, all your board members, all your leaders together at least several times a year because it breeds camaraderie. And camaraderie reminds you that you're all part of something bigger. And being reminded that you're part of something bigger usually inspires you to get more involved with it and to want to take more ownership of it. And getting to do things all together all the time, it sort of dilutes the responsibility and the pressure of always being in the charge. And also, it allows people to share their resources a lot more. So if you're all hanging out in a room together, the person from Speech Trek happens to know a videographer because they had to record the speeches. So she can tell the person from the scholarship committee who maybe wants to record the awards when she's handing out the scholarships so they can post it on the website. So you can share resources. You can't do that if you're keeping everybody in their little silos and they don't get the sort of fun element. So the next place they're hiding is that they're waiting in the wings for something new. I mean, we get bored. We get bored. We do the same projects. We do the same projects over and over. We've been doing this forever. You ask someone to take over a project that you've been doing forever. Maybe it's a financial literacy project or something that you've been doing forever. And you hand them the binder and you say, we've been doing this since 1964. And here's everything that we do in there. And here's all the ways that it works. And, it's sort of like their creativity is a little bit stifled because they don't have an opportunity to brand things with the way that they want to. So new projects beget new volunteers, always. New projects beget new volunteers. So last year we had a contest at the state level for branch activities, and we awarded some branches with activity awards when we had 18 branches submit different projects and programs that they were doing for that to be considered for this award. And many of these projects were very doable, very different. And for example, one of the winners was a project called A Step in the Right Direction, which was collecting shoes for the homeless. There was a women's history coloring book. There was a college prep series, all kinds of things. And they're all posted on our website with a description of them and a contact person so you can find out how they did them. So why not look outside a little bit from what you've been doing? Because if you inspire someone with something new, like collecting shoes for the homeless, you will very likely get someone else to step up to lead it because they have a chance to be on the ground floor. They have a chance to own it. Okay, next reason that they're still hiding, they were told they didn't have to do anything. Oh boy. So we sometimes get a little desperate, and sometimes we tell people when they join, you don't have to do anything. Just paying your dues is enough. You don't have to do anything. So we are setting up an expectation that we don't expect them to volunteer. And so we are inviting non-performers. So I know that we need to have some guilt-free membership. And I know that there are many people who want to join and support the mission, who cannot volunteer and get involved. And certainly they need to be a part of our group. But I don't think that has to be the lead off. And often you hear that that's our lead off when we're trying to get new members, is we tell them they don't have to do anything. And that's pretty counterproductive. So the next place they're hiding is that they're in your interest groups. Once again, they're playing in your interest groups. So you have to start to leverage those interest groups and to try to find those volunteers that are hiding in that little pool there. So one of the things you can do is try to sneak in some of the mission work so that these groups can see a way to maybe cross over from social to service. So maybe your book group spends one session proofreading a new brochure that you're writing, or maybe they go and read in the kindergarten classes, or maybe your garden group plants flowers at the school, or maybe your bridge group teaches card games to kids in the homeless shelter, or maybe each of your interest groups hosts one of your programs for the year. So you're trying to get them to integrate back with the mission. And also that's a way that you can reconnect with them and find some volunteer blood. So the next reason that they're hiding is that they're just not plugged in. I mean, you've heard this. It's like, oh, we had an event, we had a meeting, we had a speaker, we had a lunch, we had something last week. Well, I didn't know about it. I didn't know about it. Nobody told me that we were doing that. And you're thinking, oh, you didn't see the newsletter or the website or the Facebook pages or anything. And there's always a lot of excuses for why they're not engaged. They'll say, oh, I don't drive at night. I'm too busy with other things. I didn't read the newsletter this month. I usually read it, but I didn't read it this month. Or I didn't do any of that Facebook stuff. Or I only check my emails once a week and only in months with a full moon. Or the usual T&G, travel and grandkids. I didn't know about that event because I had grandkids here. So these are all situations where your members they're just not plugged in. So all of these situations here on this slide are missed opportunities to find new volunteers where they're hiding. So what should you do? Slide, please. You should get in their faces. So the rule of 7 is a marketing axiom. Basically, the marketing rule of 7 is that someone must be told something 7 times before they remember it. So if you want to get in their faces and get them to plug in, you have to tell them 7 times. There's a program on student debt tomorrow night. There's a program on student debt tomorrow night. There's a program on student debt tomorrow night. There's a program on student debt tomorrow, etc. And not only that, but you have to tell them in more than one way because we all learn and hear things differently. You've got people who read the newsletter religiously. You've got people who will look at your Facebook page. You've got people who will look at your website. You've got people who can be enticed by a phone call. Sometimes they see a flyer that you've posted at the store. So you need to approach and get in their faces through a variety of channels. And if you're only using 1 or 2 of those channels, you're not engaging everybody. And if you're not engaging everybody, you're not reaching that secret pool of volunteers who are hiding. Slide, please. So I'm quite certain that you're familiar with the typical ways of contacting your members to let them know what's going on so they can volunteer. Newsletters and blast emails and your website, your social media, Maybe you do some printed mailings. Maybe you even use Evite or Eventbrite or Nextdoor social networking, or maybe you use a lot of these tools. We are going to do a webinar in the fall, which will be exclusively devoted to different ways that you can promote your branch events, both to your members and to the public. So we'll be going through all of those in depth. So I don't want to veer off too far there. But I also thought I'd just give you a sneak peek and a little treat and show you 2 ways to contact members that you might not be too familiar with. The first one, believe it or not, it's robocalls. You're thinking, no robocalls. Well, yes, robocalls. These are the things that this is a tool for your non-email checking, non-newsletter reading, non-computer loving, needs lots of reminders, still love their landline members. So with the robocall, you can reach all of your members for 5 cents a call. You can send them all the same message, and you can use it to recruit volunteers or to announce some upcoming event or remind them about the programs and so on and so forth. You use it judiciously. You use it carefully. We've been using it in my branch for a few years, and I would say that in 3 years maybe of using it, we've had 2 people who've asked not to be called. The rest have actually said that they appreciate the call. It's very easy to get on their website. You can see their logo, PhoneVite. It's phonevite.com. And it shows you step by step. It's so simple that even I can do it. I am extremely non-techie and I can do it. So I'm confident that you can. But we've got a little sample. I just knocked off a little sample of how you could use it to actually ask for a volunteer for something. So we're going to play that sample one now.
Hello, AAUW members. We have a great opportunity for 3 people to stand up and introduce the panelists at our November program on the gender pay gap. We only need 2 hours of your time, not counting being nervous. This is your chance to stay up to date on legislation affecting women and get over your stage fright. Contact our president, Linda. She's in your directory, and we'll see you there.
Okay, so that's about 20
Hello, AAUW members.
Repeat it. We don't play it twice. Don't worry. We don't play it twice. So, that's about 20 seconds. And it's so easy to do and easy to record. If people don't want to listen to them, they hang up on them. But most people are grateful for the chance to hear about what's going on. You'll notice too in that sample that I was very specific about what I was asking them to do and how much time it would take them. And we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. So another thing that you might not have thought of, a different way to reach your members to sort of get in their faces a little bit more, is something that we call the branch buzz. Sandy, if you could slide, please. So the branch buzz is a little newsletter alert thing that you would send out once a month to your interest group chairs only, to the chairs of your bridge group and your movie group and your card group and your great decisions group and all of those. Each of them has a chairperson. You send this out to them and they are expected to read it to their group each month at their meeting, at their monthly meeting. So they read the branch buzz. And it reaches a lot of people who may have not been keeping up with your newsletters, website, Facebook pages, and so on, because they're in that craft group or something, and they are contacted this way. In the branch buzz, the trick is to make it only 3 bullets. And the first bullet would be to mention something that's celebratory, something that you've accomplished that you're proud of. So in this case, it says AAUW was mentioned twice in last week's edition of the newspaper. Something cool that's happened. The second bullet would be an update, something that's coming up, notification of something coming up, our fundraiser's coming up, contact so-and-so for tickets or to donate an item. The third bullet, that's the one you like. That's the one where you have a chance to ask for a volunteer. So you want to be very specific in what you're asking for. You don't want to just say, please come and help us with Tech Trek, because people want to know what they're signing up for. So in this case, it says Tech Trek needs 3 people to score the students' essays. They have great ideas on how STEM can improve the world. That kind of gives them a little motivation to want to read these kids' essays. 2 hours and 1 red pen required. Contact Trish. So it tells you what your time commit would be. So it's something that you can generate right after your monthly board meetings and just knock off these 3 bullets and send them out to your interest group chairs, which is just another way to get in their face. Okay, slide please. So part 2, we found them, right? We found them, we got in their faces. The next thing we need to do is ask them. We need to ask them to serve. And I think what's tricky here is trying to learn to change the ask. So that first line there, ask not what you can do for AAUW, ask what AAW can do for you. The modern volunteer, sadly maybe, but the modern volunteer says, what's in it for me? WIIFM, what's in it for me? How am I going to benefit from volunteering? So it's not just what the volunteer can do to help your branch. It's how are you going to repay them? What are they going to get out of this? So we want to really sort of change that ask. So you want to get past the really vague stuff. You can help kids or you can empower women. You want to get down to some, this is an opportunity for personal growth. Here's some professional skills you'll learn. You might learn how to write a press release. You might learn how to do some things with Excel that you didn't think you could do. Haven't you ever wanted to try your hand at messing around with a website a little bit? Do you want to practice a little public speaking? This is an easy crowd. Why don't you take a chance and maybe lead our first program? So you want to show them that there's some ways that it benefits them. I'll give you a good example of this where I got snookered into this myself by my own daughter-in-law. They wanted to go away for the weekend and they needed a babysitter. And I don't know, she's just smart cookie. And she called me up and said, Dawn, the kids really miss you. You haven't seen them for a while. Abby lost a tooth. You're going to really want to spend some time with them. They really want to see you. And, when we're around, it's just so distracting. You can't focus on them. So wouldn't it be a great chance to bond with them if maybe you came and took care of them for the weekend? And of course it works because she has presented it not like asking me to do a job, like come and babysit the kids. She's presenting it as an opportunity for me to benefit. So that's how we've got to look at how we ask our volunteers to work. You want to match opportunities with their interests and skills. That means you might have to do a little homework. You might want to find out what your members did before in their previous life. If it's someone who was an accountant, maybe it makes sense to ask them to help you set up maybe a dues renewal spreadsheet or something, or to help a little bit more with some of the budgeting that you're doing. So it's very helpful to match what their skills and interests are rather than just assigning them something. We also need to provide a lot of virtual volunteer opportunities these days. There are people who prefer to work at home. They prefer to work at 1 or 2 in the morning. And we have to be always thinking of opportunities you can give them that will allow them to do that. Not everybody needs to lug boxes from the car to the meeting room. There are other ways to help out, and we have to be alert to those. And you want to try hard to stop calling it a job and try to call it an opportunity, and try to keep that in your mind. The next thing is when you're changing the ask is to be truthful. So be very clear about the task that needs to be done, what skills are needed for it, what the time commitment is, so that people can volunteer where they feel very effective. So we don't want to really say, we want you to help with the newsletter. We want to say, we need someone to add events to the calendar. We'll show you how to do it. It'll take about 1 hour a week. It's different from just saying help with the newsletter, which people kind of shy away from a little bit. So besides being truthful, you want to drill it down. You want to parse big jobs into small ones as much as you possibly can. So ask for help in terms of time. Ask for help in terms of hours. So don't just say, help with the yard sale. You say, can you do a 2-hour shift at the yard sale to raise money for scholarships? Because it's also really important to tell people why they're doing what they're doing for you. You can run little help wanted ads in your newsletter that are broken down by hours. Like, if you have 1 hour this month, could you do this? If you have 10 hours this month, could you do that? And make them sound engaging. For the yard sale, for example, you could run a help wanted ad that says, talk people into buying useless stuff for 2 hours. Fun, talkative people only need apply. Chance to buy back someone else's useless stuff. 2 openings, Saturday from 12 to 2 and from 4 to 6. Kind of makes people feel like, oh, okay, I can do a 2-hour stint, and that sounds kind of fun. The next thing to think about in changing the ask is to stop begging. I think that we should have an expectation that our members care about our branch and they care about the work that it does and that they want to volunteer. They shouldn't have an expectation that this is a one-way street. So you shouldn't need to beg, because in theory, we are giving the volunteers something of value too. And you also want to assume the sale. You know, the business term, assume the sale, the presumptive close, assume that they will do it. So instead of saying, can you spare a few hours to help at the yard sale? Pretty, please. You instead say, I have 4 time slots. Which one works for you? So that's, whoops. Well, my video's died for the first time ever. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
I will continue then. Let me pick up where I was. Okay, and along that same line, if you along that same line of the presumptive close, where you assume that they will fill in those time slots, when you're back to in-person meeting again, there's nothing better than passing around a list with a lot of blank lines on it for people to sign their names, because there's a lot of value in guilt. And when you have something that clearly is a blank page and needs people to sign up for, they'll do it, because you're assuming that they will, because you have put it in their face. The next one is don't cater to the lifers. Another way of changing the way we approach the ask of our volunteers. The lifers are, we all have lifers. We have lots of lifers in our branches. The lifers are the people who have been in AAUW forever. They will probably stay forever. They are valuable, but they're probably not going to really be participatory. So I think we sometimes waste a bit of energy in trying to engage them more than is probably valuable. So you might want to think about shifting your priorities to go after the members that you view as being more available for engagement. And that gets down to something as very basic as, we know that a lot of times we will hold our meetings at 4 o'clock in the afternoon or something, because we have a lot of members who don't drive at night. So by doing that, we're excluding, of course, the working woman. So, well, at least in the old days, maybe these days, not so much with the Zoom, but you know, you just sort of think about, like, let's think about balancing this so that we aren't catering it to the people who are probably not going to really participate and support the work anyway, compared to the other folks. So just sort of shift your focus there. And the next thing to think about in changing the ask is to offer a volunteer value promise. Again, do your members have any expectation of what they'll get out of AAW? Or is it always the other way around? Have we set up any expectations of what they're getting. I see a note here that a lot of people's video is disappearing. So this may be a blessing in disguise for you. I don't know. Well, as long as you can hear it, I guess. So
Dawn,
when you
this-
think about,
Dawn, I think after your section, I'm going to stop the share and restart and see if we can get the video back, because it might not be you, it might be something with Zoom in general.
okay,
Okay.
I await.
Okay, that didn't seem to make any difference. I don't see you, so go ahead.
I tried to turn it back
Oh,
on and it said
Here
no.
we go. Okay,
Oh,
it's kind of coming and going. I think it's a Zoom thing.
I think so too. We
yeah,
never
so-
heard it.
Yeah, so
never
go
heard
ahead
it.
and we'll just do it without your pretty face.
I will, you know, I will try to just project my everything through the screen here without looking at me. So the last thing is offer a volunteer value promise. And really what that means is give your volunteers an idea of what they're going to get out of it, as we talked about before. You know, if you think about your brochures, for example, that you leave out to recruit members, a lot of times the brochure just talks about what AAUW is doing for the community. And that isn't as appealing to the modern volunteers also mentioning what it's going to do for them. And I think it's useful sometimes to stop and pause and try to think about what you're going to be offering them. Sandy, slide, please. So, for example, it wouldn't hurt to have a handout with your recruitment materials and your membership application that reminds them of what they're going to get out of this. And it should be very specific to your branch. So you might want to say something like, by volunteering in the Lego branch of AAUW, you will what? Make a difference in Lego land. By doing what? Specifically mention what your branch does that makes a difference. That's really important. You will network and learn from how many amazing like-minded people? 40, 50, 100? If you have a membership of 70 or 80 or something like that, that sounds really impressive. I would want to be a part of an organization that has that many people in it who are like-minded. And then you might add kind of them are what? Some of them are teachers, maybe artists, engineers, realtors, whatever. So I can say like, oh, these kind of sound like some of my peeps. You know, I'd like to meet some of these interesting people. By volunteering, you will, next bullet, practice your skills and learn new ones while you're working on our activities. That's what we talked about before, is always giving people an opportunity to learn something new if you can. Network and socialize with other organizations and people who make things happen in your community. So, you know, being a part of AAUW and U community may also give you entree to some other civic organizations that you might not have normally. This could be of interest to people who are looking to expand themselves professionally and socially. You will be using your time in a stimulating and rewarding way. Enough said. Here we are tonight being stimulated and maybe rewarded. You will practice brainstorming, planning, organizing, and collaborating to get a job done. This is just project management training for young professionals and younger members who are looking to develop their skills. Why not let them know that they can get that done by working within your branch and doing something wonderful at the same time? And last, you'll get inspired. Very important, always to tick that box that it's very important that the people feel that understand that this is also an important and very meaningful experience and opportunity to give. Okay, next slide, please. So now we're going to talk about Take Me to Your Leader. The good news is that we've done part 1 and part 2. We found the volunteers and we asked the volunteers. But the bad news is that now no one wants to be the leader of those volunteers. So we know what's going on. Carol and I and all of the other people on the state board, we know that branches are struggling with finding leaders. We know that you're playing musical chairs with your directors. We understand the difficulties of filling your ranks. It is a problem that's being endured in all service organizations. So we know also that developing leaders is a very long-term process. There's a lot of steps on the ladder. You don't just grab somebody off the street corner and say, oh my gosh, you're a warm body, you're going to be our leader. We know that there's a long and important process for that. On the other hand, we sort of need some shortcuts right now because we have a lot of branches that are struggling right now. So I am going to hand this off to Carol because this is her forte.
Okay, before we start, Carol, I'm going to stop and there you go.
Oops, start my video. Okay, so golly, Dawn makes me want to sign up for a few more things. I hope it makes everyone else feel that way too. So we need to find where the enthusiasm is. You, as some of the vital few, are tired. Your branch members are tired. Why are we doing this? Let's take a look at auw.org, the national website, and auw-ca.org, our state website, and you will be inspired. I mean, you'll be amazed. Every time I go on, something's new, something I didn't know about. Also, look at some other branches' websites because they have ideas you never thought of. You know, we have 119 branches in California, and everyone is different. So take a look. In order to find them, I mean, there are many ways, but the easiest way is to put the branch name, say Beach Cities, and AAUW in your search box, like Google or whatever you use, and click send, and it will take you there. And then it'll take you to their website. You can look at their newsletter. You can read their website. Really, people do these things. AAUW is vigorous and effective, and we're all part of that. We're more than just fun and friendship, although that is fun and that is important. We're all more than books and bridge. We do things for our community, important things, things we don't want to let go. Why did we join? You know, ask your members this. You may get several different answers and they're all interesting, but it makes them think and start to revalue. We are tired, so let's find some more energy. Did you know that AAUW is almost alone in offering interest groups, the fun part, the social part, to encourage projects and community benefits that we provide? Most everybody just says, you know, join Rotary and this is what we do. Well, we are. We're a social track and a service track, as John mentioned. And I particularly got this from the Oakland Piedmont branch, which is working successfully towards refreshing their branch enthusiasm. Next slide, please, Sandy. So change your branch so you can keep changing lives. Make it fresh. You want to try something new? Try an alternative structure. Simplify and pare down your board members. And really, AAUW only requires 3: a facilitator or administrator, whichever the lucky person prefers to be called, a treasurer, and a secretary. You don't need a cast of thousands. And I was reading something by Benjamin Franklin recently, and he said one way to happiness, which he cared about more than good behavior apparently, is the power to promote public welfare. Here is your chance. So next slide, please, Sandy. You'll need, first of all, the facilitator or administrator or some other title. They are there to hold the reins, not hold the wagon. That's one of my favorite wise sayings. And to be the primary contact between AAUW and the branch and national also. She or he also keeps track of the committee, but we'll talk about that more later. This, of course, is a critical job But if you make it smaller and clearer, someone will likely step up. Next slide, please. The treasurer, can't do without them. She manages the branch finances. She or he should, of course, like numbers and actually be good at it. The treasurer doesn't have to do it all. She can find a friend, find a new member, or just have someone in walking off the street who's a branch member to do things like take the checks to the bank, make calls, check the post office box, you know, all the daily stuff that the important person with the checkbook doesn't have to do. You all know who has these financial skills. So ask or make it look pleasant for them, because it is. Who doesn't like writing checks for somebody else's money? Next slide, please. Thank you. You're also going to need a secretary. Probably should type. And if so, we want to be your friend. All they do really is take minutes at meetings. There may be a few other little jobs like writing a thank you note, but not necessarily. That is up to you, and that is up to the person signing up. Again, simplify the job. It's not necessary to take down every word or every action. You only have to pay attention to actions that were taken, particularly votes. Try having a secretary of the month. Okay, next slide, please. Secretary was one of the more easy jobs, but it's important. But we have to be clear to make the jobs easier. We have to be clear. If no one offers, it doesn't get done. One of my branches decided not to take part in our IBC career track one year because nobody stepped up, but we missed it. And we saw all the other kids in the area going to career track and our kids weren't. So next year we had 2 people sign up for it. So, you know, don't give up hope, but you have to be ruthless in cutting. You have to be realistic. You have to be firm. If there's no leader, there's no project. Next slide, please. You have resources. Oh, I'm not there yet, heavens. Another hint for making the job easy. Hold on here. 6, 5. I've skipped a page. Well, that's very much like me. What we do is to pare down our branch's activities. You have to ask everybody which projects and events are important to them. One branch, the North Peninsula branch, south of San Francisco, sent out a survey to all members. You could make phone calls, and of course you could use Dawn's robocall. You ask every member which project and event is most important to them and to the community. Then you have to follow up so you actually get a reply. Don't overlook your Tech Track enthusiasm. No branch, no Tech Track for your local girls. Tech Track has saved more than one branch. And then you can ask them what they will do to keep to their branch to keep a favorite project going. Some people will actually answer, at which point you may rejoice. But again, as I said before, you have to be clear. If no one volunteers for a particular activity, it doesn't get done. Next slide, please. Okay, so the leaders, so to speak, our 3, our leaders or our leadership team needs to form a committee of the mostly willing. Again, this will be pared down considerably, but we have to make it very clear. So you will have a new and much shorter list of activities resulting from your survey and who is willing to do what and who is willing to work. You must work up short, detailed, truthful, non-scaried job descriptions. I mean, really. Remember the animal that was supposedly built by a committee that turned out to be a camel? This is not that kind of committee. We actually are looking for an active committee, but with many more members necessarily, if you're lucky. You want not really job descriptions actually, but a list of responsibilities and a timeline. Instead of giving them the enormous book that Don referred to about your particular project that they've been doing since 1965, try putting what really is important today on one sheet of paper with everything that they need to do that really needs to be done. You can have an optional section if you want, and a timeline. This needs to be done by 2 months before the project, whatever. It really does help. And of course, any committee member is kind of in charge of finding her own committee, which of course will make everything more fun, as Dawn mentioned, and happier. You might include headings like this. This came from Dawn. Call the board meetings, write newsletter articles, manage interest groups, oversee scholarship project, oversee Tech Trek, oversee the home tour fundraiser, oversee social media, write member emails, proofread newsletter, oversee the member mixer. Try to find one person to do one of these things, and you can build on that. And as I said, they'll find their own committee. Members should look for volunteers, not just last year's leaders. It's a team effort. What you're all doing here, besides invigorating your branch, is saving it. So be clear with everyone. If no one offers, it doesn't get done. And if nothing gets done, we're looking towards a void. Next slide, please. Okay, now you have resources. Offer lunch. Everybody likes lunch. They'll come. And this is a good time to bring out Dawn's volunteer project promise. But be sure to include, of course, your interest group leaders too. Invite them to bring ideas, to be creative, to compare skills. Ask them to join the more casual committee, the one with the cute name, with fewer responsibilities. Discuss important jobs like communication. If the newsletter is too much trouble, send a weekly or monthly email with the calendar, news, and contacts instead. You can co-opt a family member to update your website or keep your Facebook page up to date. If you have questions, if you want to know how to Facebook, check out tech tools at aauw-ca.org. Our web team is very, very good at teaching and explaining and posting things on the website. So do take a look at it to see what's there, even if you don't need it now. Considering offering a joint program or more with a local group that has similar goals. For example, the League of Women Voters, particularly near election season. That's what will fulfill some of our public policy duties and will help everyone. And then it's an easier thing. Next slide, please. So when you have your captive audience at lunch, ask what event would appeal to each interest group. And then everybody brainstorms from those ideas. The book group could host an author's event or an author's lunch, or feature an author of a favorite or a timely book as a meeting. Recently, there have been an awful lot on diversity and inclusion, and some very important books have been read, as in one of my towns, a book in common. And AUW did a Zoom meeting with the author. It was very helpful. It really was, and interesting, and certainly got a lot of people there. Again, you have to be clear. If no one offers, it doesn't get done. Next slide, please. So there you have it. You have ready-made events, ready-made hosts for an event. If you use what skills they already have, you can build on that. Offer them, however, more tools to succeed. AUW California-CA offers excellent training for many jobs with toolkits, etc., webinars for other jobs, and you can also always ask your friendly local branch assistance director, which is me. Pair new leaders, if only in a small way, with experienced ones when you can find them. Shadowing and a bit of training are a comfort, plus those new job descriptions. The new short ones on one page, if you can manage that, will help. They're far less scary than the 400-page, 3-inch thick 3-ring binder. The organization of your branch must be easier and clearer. I think we've kind of gotten a bit Byzantine in some ways, and some of us can handle that, and some of us are tired of it. So try something new. Enthusiasm will follow. If you offer a chance to do something great for their AUW branch and to gain new skills for themselves, they'll come. Be positive, keep trying, and remember the goal, a return to your lively, active branch. Good luck. Now back to Dawn for some more pearls of wisdom.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, but we can't see you.
Well, that's good, because while Carol was talking, I just went and put my pajamas on because I figured it was hopeless. I've got my kitty cat pajamas on. Just kidding. Thanks, Carol. Great ideas from you as always, because you have many more years experience than I do. Okay, we have successfully gone through part 1 and part 2. Sandy, slide, please. We've looked at how to find our volunteers. We looked at how to ask our volunteers. And now we're going to look at how do we keep our volunteers. And I think in the ask volunteers, I remember during my little interlude here that I had forgotten to mention that I think we all know that the personal ask is usually the best. And if you personally ask someone, one-on-one, you have a better chance that they can't get away from you. Most of you probably are familiar with the code for that. And the code for that is, hi, would you like to have a cup of coffee with me sometime? Yeah, that's how I got sucked into it. And the person who pulled that trick on me is the one running this webinar for us, Sandy. But that's the code. When you tell someone you want to have a cup of coffee with them, if they haven't already learned the code, they'll say, sure. If they know the code, they'll run, and then you're going to have to use some of those other techniques. But anyway, on to part 3, volunteers, how do we keep them? One of the key things I think is that you have to get more business-like about this. We just have to get more business-like. We have some serious projects and programs that we're running. They have very important and meaningful impacts on our community, as Carol was talking about. So we have to begin to step up and run them as though they, in an organized and orderly fashion. So we need to be more business-like. And the first part of that is to be very honest about the requirements of what we are now calling an opportunity. And that's really what Carol was talking about as well, is really we're talking about a job description, but not in a job description that is intimidating, as Carol said, but one that is very honest and very specific. So when I first joined and I was asked to be a speech track coach, and I was not, the person who recruited me for that was sort of forgot to tell me what the job was. Oh, excuse me, the opportunity was. And said, well, you've coached, you've seen sports coaches, or you've maybe been a sports coach, you know how to coach, just do the coaching. And so I signed up because I'm foolish and I'm one of the vital few. But I also realized, the better way to do that is to be very honest about what is involved. So when I chaired Speech Trek, I was more careful to explain to people, you will be assigned a student. They will write a 500-word essay. You will edit it. You will assist them with some of their thinking process, but not with their presentation itself. You may be able to guide them towards some resources. You'll meet with them 3 times. You'll do a practice session with them on the stage, that kind of thing. You might need to spend 2 hours a week with them for a total of 4 weeks. So I think then people know what they're in for, and that you're going to get a better performer when they know what they're in for. Third, how to keep them is to hold them accountable. We need to ask for reports. If people don't show up, we need to inquire why. If people are falling behind on timelines, you need to know that. So you, as the overall puppet master, general manager of this organization, need to know where your people are as they're working on their projects. They need to have timelines and schedules, and you need to be watching them so that you can assist them if they are slipping behind. The main thing about this is that holding people accountable makes them feel valued. Holding them accountable makes them feel valued. The message is, we have trouble doing this if you're not here. We have trouble doing this if you're not doing your part. We need you. And what greater motivation is that to people than to be needed? I was a tutor for a local community organization, and I diligently showed up for my tutoring sessions, and I had to skip a couple for one reason or another, and I was never questioned about it. I never signed in, I never signed out. No one ever asked me why I hadn't come. And over time, I began to realize that they didn't care if I came or not, because they never followed up with me. And I quit the tutoring because I did not feel valued or that I was contributing. Next, to keep them is stop backfilling. Stop backfilling. If a job doesn't get done, that does not mean that you have to do it. It just means, as Carol pointed out, it just means that it might not get done. Sometimes you have to do a little tough love. Sometimes you have to tell the volunteer, if you don't do it, it will not be done. Our branch will no longer collect school supplies for the needy kids, because I'm sorry that for one reason or another, you're unable to do this task, and I have no one else, so it won't be done. And so sometimes you have to do that. And it's really hard for us, people like us, all of you are here, because we want to jump in and backfill for them. That doesn't help you in the long run because you're not developing your volunteers. The next one is to keep your eye on them. Again, monitor, check in, watch timelines. The words of Sandy, our host, always says, trust but verify, trust but verify. Assume they're doing it, but check in on them. Next is model what you want. Act like you want your volunteers to act. That will help them stay inspired. Don't complain about your job. Don't talk about how hard it is to be president. Don't talk about how miserable you are because nobody's showing up to help you. Be positive, be assertive, be confident, and you will find that people around you will act the same way. The next thing is you may have to actually hand out a pink slip. I think that having a bad volunteer is not necessarily better than having no volunteer at all. And that's because the integrity of your work suffers, and that affects your brand and your image and your presence and the success of your projects. So having a bad volunteer, again, is not better than having no volunteer at all. It's better to discontinue the project. So why do volunteers fail? Sometimes because they don't have the capacity or the skill set. Perhaps you didn't assess their abilities correctly. Maybe they misunderstood the job. Maybe you weren't clear enough in your job description or your time commitment request. Maybe they got set a little too far adrift. Maybe you forgot to check and verify them. Maybe you forgot to follow up on what they were doing. And they may just be overcommitted. These are realities of life. This is part of the reason that volunteerism is declining. So we have to accept and work with that. With always solutions, you can certainly coach. You can certainly engage a co-chair or a partner and engage a helper to help that person. But the reality is a lot of times we end up nagging and we end up ranting with someone else, or we end up doing it ourselves. So I think you have to trust your gut. And sometimes it's worth it with a volunteer to maybe help them a little more than you should, or take over a little more than you should, because you see some potential there and you recognize that maybe they're briefly overcommitted. But for the most part, you got to trust your gut, and you'll know early if it's not working. You know it, don't you? So you need to move that volunteer on, find something more appropriate, or look for a replacement. And if you don't get one, you do exactly what Carol said, which is that you tell the membership that that project will be on hiatus. And that's the essence of let it go. And that takes me back to my little babysitting scenario, because my little 3-year-old granddaughter, is a fan of Frozen and runs around the house with these princess dresses and these long flags that she's running around and yelling, "Let it go, let it go, let it go." And I thought, wow, that's a pretty mature concept, because that is what we have to do. So we should take a lesson from 3-year-olds. Next slide, please. So we get to the last part about how to thank volunteers. We found them, we asked them to step up and become leaders. And now we need to thank them. There's probably no article or book or webinar or speaker that you've ever heard that has not said to thank your volunteers. We hear it all the time. It's at the end of every article. Thank them, thank them, thank them. I think we really know that. I think we all understand that. But it's kind of fun to think about some different ways that you can thank people. Where our go-to is usually our newsletter. We usually wait until the project is over, and then we write maybe 14 paragraphs about the project and how it went. And in there, buried, we thank all sorts of people. Or we stand up at the end of the event and we thank all sorts of people. And there's a place for that. There certainly is, for those newsletter articles that say things like, "We had a lovely new members tea with all that clever decorating that Wendy did. Thank you so much. And those yummy cookies that Sally baked, they were wonderful. And thanks to Ramona for setting up the tables and the chairs." We put all of that in the newsletter, and there's a place for that. But after a while, it comes across as kind of an administrative duty. And also, not everybody reads your newsletter. So, just like getting in our members' faces, we want to look at some other ways that you might be able to thank people for what they do. One of them is to go beyond the newsletter, try to find some other ways to thank them. There's nothing wrong with a handwritten note in the mail. Can you imagine getting just a tiny little card that says, "Thanks for your help last weekend"? How long would that take you to do? And imagine like a card in the mail. Those are the kinds of things you remember, because you appreciate that someone spent a moment to do that. You want to be sure that, if you can, the beneficiaries that the volunteer is helping are the ones that are thanking them directly. For example, your Tech Trek girls, when they have them write thank you notes, make sure that those thank you notes are directly placed in the volunteer's hands. You can do some odd things too, like if you have a younger member who is maybe entering college or is looking for a first job or so on, offer to write a letter of recommendation. Do shout outs on social media. We always forget that. Thank that volunteer by name, that person on your social media. I've heard of sending a video, a little audio video, rather an audio clip of someone clapping. You just attach it to an email, send it to them, and it's just hands clapping. If you could see me, you'd see my hands clapping. You can stop in the middle of a program and simply hand out a thank you card or a flower to someone in the audience who helped put it on. Just randomly do that. And when you are honoring maybe one of your board members or someone who's been a particularly helpful person in your organization, and maybe they're departing, or maybe you just want to recognize them, try something different. There's a flower ceremony you can do where you have a member bring a flower from their garden or whatever, and you walk up and tell the person you're thanking what it was that you enjoyed about working with them, or a particularly memorable moment that you had with them, or a funny thing that happened with them, and hand them the flower. And then the next member comes up and does it, and the next member. And at the end, the person you're honoring has a bouquet and also a lot of personal memories, because it's been very personalized by the people who spoke. And you can do the same thing with like little index cards that have little notes on them that the person who's being honored can put in a scrapbook at the end. It's just, they're more personal. They're very special. They're very meaningful. You want to celebrate the small things. Oh, excuse me, you want to catch them being good. As I said, just stop the activity in the middle and hand someone a thank you card right in the middle of it. And celebrate the small things. Look for little things. When somebody's hanging up a sign, say something. When somebody just responds to an email, say something. If they show up, say something. If they walk around picking up water bottles, say something. Look for the small things. Don't wait until the end with the big, long 14-paragraph thank you in the newsletter. And the final thing I want to mention is, I think, the most important way that you can thank a volunteer is by listening. The best way to appreciate someone is to give them influence over the next outcome. So hold your volunteer feedback sessions, your lessons learned sessions. Gather your volunteers after every event. Talk them through what went well, what didn't go well, and mainly, how was it for you? What did you get out of it? Because guaranteed someone will say, whoa, well, I couldn't get the laptop and the projector working, and I pulled this plug out and I stuck it into another port and it worked, and I feel very powerful now. So what was it that made this event, what made them feel good? Or if someone solved a little thorny problem, or if someone overheard someone in the audience saying something wonderful about the event. It's all of these things. It's nice for your volunteers to get a chance to share them, as well as the usual what worked and didn't work. So again, the best way you can thank them is by listening, because if they feel that they've been heard and they had a part in the future, they'll feel that they have a part in the future events. Slide, please. So that is a wrap up for me. And I definitely want to thank all of you for attending. And I ended this by saying, now go and ask someone to have a cup of coffee, and you know what that means. So if they don't know the code, you can do the coffee. If they do know the code and they're trying to run, you're going to have to try some of these other things that Carol and I have talked about tonight. So I appreciate that. And I think we're going to move into questions.
All right, Dawn, I'm going to stop sharing. We have a couple of questions in the queue here, and Linda's going to be asking those, but I wanted to share something. I wanted to just acknowledge that Dawn actually practices what she preaches. And I just want to share with you a little book that I got after I was president in our branch, and you can see there are all these little different cards from everybody. They're all unique. And I still have this. And this was from, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago when I was branch president. And I look through it periodically and am reminded about why I do the hard stuff, why I'm here at 8:30 on a weekday night working with you guys. So it is, she's right, it does work. And
Thanks for sharing that, because I think it's really effective, and I think, and it also gives the members an opportunity to have a very personal moment to tell you what they appreciated about working with you. In the case of Sandy, for all of you who are listening, it was very easy to come up with wonderful things to say.
All
But I
right.
sure don't have any video yet.
No, that's why the video disappeared, because you were the active speaker, which sounds like there's another phrase that relates to that sounds awful, but you were the active speaker. And since you didn't have video on, that's why the video went away. So
Well,
Carol's got hers on,
it's
and
still off.
Linda,
It's
yeah,
still, yeah.
so you'll just have to speak without us seeing you. So
Well,
Linda, do we have any
yes.
questions in the Q&A?
Yes, I do. Thank you. I can go ahead and leave my video off as well, if that's okay. And I'll just, oh, you wanted me to start my video? Okay, I
Sure.
will. All right.
Okay, there you go.
So I
Sure.
did have, I know Carolyn Saylor said to thank you both. This has been most helpful. But we did have a couple of questions. Mary Renner asked if, don't you need a membership chair? That was a question. Perhaps that's the best for Carol.
Actually, I've been dealing with this. The answer is, of course, you need people to handle the membership. You don't need a particular membership chair. As I said, there are only 3 positions that are required, essentially the facilitator, the treasurer, and the secretary. Those 3 are elected by the membership. The committee is apparently not. The committee can come and go. What one of my branches, actually more than one of my branches, has been doing about the membership chair is that there's kind of, they frequently divide the, depending on their skill set. One person loves making phone calls and the other person loves working with the computer. So what you need for a membership is someone to go out and find them, someone to draw them in, explain things, and then you need somebody to do the more technical side of processing their membership with National. And it works quite well. This is essentially the smaller the committee within the committee. And again, you work with what you've got, but it does not have to be a formal voted on position. You just need to find someone or some people to do the job.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Nancy Hines Glasser asked, do we have a sharing work list? Who can advise use if we are insecure about saying yes? I'm not exactly sure what this is referring to, but it was fairly early on in the presentation, Dawn.
I'm sorry, what was it called again? A
Sharing work list.
Well, maybe that's a business term that I'm unfamiliar with. I'm not sure I know what she means. I mean, one thing that may be even off topic, but is that when you are co-sharing a job, if you're co-chairing a job, it's very helpful to make a chart first of all the responsibilities involved with that job so that you can actually chart them on paper and assign them to each person. So it's very clear who's responsible for what. I think Carol read some of those earlier, so that you end up with a job list and you know exactly who's responsible for each one of them. So they have to be very specific. Other than sort of the basic kind of job description that Carol was mentioning, I'm not sure I'm understanding what she's asking. Maybe if she's still around, she can type a more clarification.
Nancy, are you still online? Would you like to clarify? And we'll go on to another question while we're waiting to see if Nancy responds. Ashley Dargert asked, what are the reasons you think volunteerism is decreasing?
Well,
I think
most of us are going to work.
What did you say, Carol?
What I said was that, it's an obvious outcome of when people go to work full time and have a family, they don't necessarily have as much time as they used to to give to these organizations and projects. Some of us do, many of us do, but a lot of people just don't. It's one reason I think we have more older retired members, because there's more time. I mean, I've been a member since my kids had gone to school, but I may be unusual in so many ways. Dawn may have some other ideas also.
No, I think you nailed it. And I mean, I hate to sound so sexist, but I think a lot of the extensive volunteering and service organizations that we saw 40 or 50 years ago were manned by women, and those women are now working. So I think that's changed it. I think volunteering itself is a little bit devalued. I think this is a very self-serving time that we're in, and I think people are more interested in serving themselves, and it's a little bit of a self-centered society right now. So I think it's a malaise that's universal.
Thank you. And Nancy did respond. She said tasks that one group does that is good, helpful to another. Sorry, it's confusing. So, but and someone else mentioned that they thought it was referring to, as you mentioned, a sort of a sign-up sheet or a task assignment sheet.
I think it's really important when you're job sharing, and we are very much encouraging that, is that you spend the time to write a chart of all of the tasks so that it's very clear who will be in charge of monitoring the interest groups, who will be in charge of following up the Tech Trek schedules, who will be in charge of this and that. And I think if you clarify all of those, it's very helpful. Otherwise, it's a little bit murky, and your members don't always know whom they should contact if they have a certain question. So I think it's very helpful if you tell them at the beginning of the year, Carol's in charge of this, this, and this, Dawn's in charge of this, this, and this. So I think that really helps too. And perhaps also people are talking about overlaps, where there may be overlaps in tasks between different groups within your branch. That may also occur.
We had 2 additional comments regarding the board structures. Christina said regarding the structure, it includes 3 required elected positions, and the committee members would be appointed, Tech Track Fund Share Scholarship, etc. And then Charmin said the point of clarification, she says, according to the bylaws, only a branch state administrator and finance chair are legally required. The rest certainly make the branch work easier though. Carol, did you have a comment?
I've heard about 4 different versions of that, and we're trying to get to the bottom of it. What I explained was the latest that I heard, but Charmin tends to know a whole lot more about these things than I do. So we'll investigate further. Thank you.
I think it also depends on whether you're an incorporated or unincorporated branch. Makes a difference as well as to your secretary requirement for a secretary.
Good point.
So it's best to err on the side of having one.
Yes.
Thank you. And Nancy made us an additional comment before she was signing off. Skills sharing among branches. Who's the specialist in getting group discussions started, was her comment. So it's like if you're sharing, if you're partnering with other organizations and things like that. So some, like you were saying, differentiation of tasks.
Mm-hmm.
And she was very thankful for the presentation, her ability to ask the question, even if it didn't make as much sense as she'd hoped.
So well, then neither did our answers, so it's fine. We're just fine. It's a wash.
It's a wash. So we had lots of thank yous. Everyone enjoyed it. You did a wonderful presentation. So
that was very enjoyable.
All right, so I want to
all be getting a robocall from us soon.
I just wanted to thank Linda, Randa, and Nancy, who've been working behind the scenes with me to make sure that your questions get answered and we can put the links into the chat and that sort of thing. So I want to say thank you to them as well. So that concludes our session for this evening.